Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I often get messages here on BookTube saying, John, you're not a ballerina, but you keep us on our toes. And to that, I say thank you. As you probably know, one of the things I like to keep you apprised of are the new and upcoming releases from Princeton University Press. Around July, over the summer, I came out with the last video telling you about the newest books that I wanted to talk to you about that they had sent me gratis, and I have 5 more. All history on wide-ranging subjects, everything from 2 books on Soviet history, 1 on Africa's attempt to reclaim its art in a colonial age, 1 on early Christianity, and 1 book of early Muslim history. So 5 books, all history. Let me jump right in. This first book, I also have the due dates, not due dates, the U.S. release dates. This first book came out in May 7th, actually. All of these, except for 1, have already come out, and the last one I'll show you actually comes out on Tuesday. So let's get this filmed before they're already old news. All of them. The first book is Michael Cook's A History of the Muslim World, from its origins to the dawn of modernity. And this doesn't look big, but the paper is on the thinner side. We're talking notes and everything, nearly 900 pages. I don't think the size is quite communicated by the width of the binding there. This book describes and explains the major events, personalities, conflicts, and convergences that have shaped the history of the Muslim world. The body of the book takes readers from the origins of Islam to the eve of the 19th century, and an epilogue continues the story to the present day. Michael Cook, who, by the way, is also at Princeton University, he's the class of 1943 university professor of Near Eastern Studies there. He provides a broad history of Muslim civilization, remarkable for both its unity and its diversity. After setting the scene in the Middle East of late antiquity, the book describes the rise of Islam as one of the great black swan events of history. It continues with the spectacular rise of the Caliphate, an empire that by that time broke up, had nurtured the new formation of a new civilization. It then goes on to cover the diverse histories of all the major regions of the Muslim world, providing a wide-ranging account of key military, political, and cultural developments that accompanied the eastward and westward spread of Islam from the Middle East to the shores of the Atlantic and the Pacific. So I have ambitions for Historathon one of these days, maybe appropriately to start in Q2 sometime, to do a sort of dedicated series of books on Islam. I have probably a 3 or 4 foot linear feet of books on the history of Islam, the theology of it, the literature of it, all sorts of subjects. And I just want to sit down one year and make my way through that pile. And when I do that, this will be one of the books in the pile. I might make it dedicated to that, to a video to that sometime soon. But there is this out as of May, A History of the Muslim World by Michael Cook. Next, we have a book that just came out in August. This came out in August 13th. This is To the Success of Our Hopeless Cause, The Many Lives of the Soviet Dissident Movement by Benjamin Nathans. And Benjamin Nathans has also written Beyond the Pale, The Jewish Encounter with Late Imperial Russia, and he is the Alan Charles Coors Associate Professor of History at the University of Pennsylvania. To the Success of Our Hopeless Cause begins in the 1960s, when the Soviet Union was unexpectedly confronted by a dissident movement that captured the world's imagination. Demanding that the Kremlin obey its own laws, an improbable band of Soviet citizens held unauthorized public gatherings, petitioned in support of arrested intellectuals, and circulated banned samizdat texts. Soviet authorities arrested dissidents, subjected them to bogus trials and vicious press campaigns, sentenced them to psychiatric hospitals and labor camps, sent them into exile, and transformed them into martyred heroes. Against all odds, the dissident movement undermined the Soviet system and unexpectedly hastened its collapse. Taking its title from a toast at dissident meetings to the success of our hopeless cause is a definitive history of a remarkable group of people who helped change the 20th century. Benjamin Nathan's vivid narrative tells the dramatic story of the men and women who became dissidents, from Nobel laureate Andrei Sakharov and Alexander Solzhenitsyn to many others who are virtually unknown today, drawing on diaries, memoirs, personal letters, interviews, and KGB interrogation records to the success of our hopeless cause reveals how dissidents decided to use Soviet law to contain the power of the Soviet state. This strategy, as one of them put it, was, quote, simple to the point of genius. In an unfree country, they begin to conduct themselves like free people. A perennial political lesson to keep in mind. Say that 5 times fast. Moving on, some African history and Africa's relationship to mostly Europe, I'm guessing, considering its colonial past. This is Africa's struggle for its art, History of a Post-Colonial Defeat by Bénédicte Savoy. And Bénédicte Savoy is a professor of art history in Berlin and a former professor at the Collège de France. For decades, African nations have fought for the return of countless works of art stolen from the colonial era, during the colonial era, and placed in Western museums. In Africa's struggle for its art, Bénédicte Savoy brings to light this largely unknown but deeply important history. One of the world's foremost experts on restitution and cultural heritage, Savoy investigates extensive, previously unpublished sources to reveal that the roots of the struggle extend much further back than prominent recent debates indicate, and that these efforts were covered up by myriad opponents. Shortly after 1960, when 18 former colonies in Africa gained independence, a movement to pursue repatriation was spearheaded by African intellectuals and political classes. Savoy looks at pivotal events, including the watershed speech delivered at the UN General Assembly by Zaire's president, Mobutu Sese Seko, which started the debate regarding restitution of colonial-era assets and resulted in the first UN resolution on the subject. She examines how German museums try to withhold information about their inventory and how the British Parliament failed to pass a proposed amendment to the British Museum Act, which protected the country's collections. And Savoy concludes in the mid-1980s when African nations enacted the first laws focusing on the protections of their cultural heritage. This is a fascinating subject. Of course, Africa has been, its artistic and cultural heritages have been plundered, not only by European countries, but also by just stronger powers around it that sort of leaves its heritage and its culture, its sort of spread all over the world, instead of in what I would consider the rightful hands of the people who created it. But an interesting book, and by the way, if you're interested in the topic, not a very long one at all. We're talking less than 140 pages. So, the next book is the one on early Christianity. This came out on the 15th of October. So I'm less than a month late. Progress. This is by, well, I'll tell you the title first. This is Ancient Christianities, The First 500 Years by Paula Fredrickson. And Paula Fredrickson is the Aurelio Professor of Scripture Emerita at Boston University and the Professor Emerita of Comparative Religion at Hebrew University, Jerusalem. So, the ancient Mediterranean world teemed with gods. For centuries, a practical religious pluralism prevailed. How then did one particular god come to dominate the politics and piety of the late Roman Empire? In Ancient Christianities, Paula Fredrickson traces the evolution of early Christianity, or rather, early Christianities, through 5 centuries of empire, mapping its pathways from the hills of Judea to the halls of Rome and Constantinople. It is a story with a sprawling cast of characters, not only theologians, bishops, and emperors, but also gods and demons, angels and magicians, astrologers and ascetics, saints and heretics, aristocratic patrons, and millenarian enthusiasts. All played their part in the development of what became and remains an energetically diverse biblical religion. The New Testament, as we know it, represents only a small selection of the many Gospels, letters, Acts of the Apostles, and Revelations that circulated before the establishment of the imperial church. It tells how the Gospel passed from Jesus to the Apostles, thence to Paul. But by using our peripheral vision, by looking to non-canonical and paracanonical texts, by availing ourselves of information derived from papyri, inscriptions, and archaeology, we can see a different, richer, and much less linear story emerging. Fredrickson brings together these many sources to reconstruct the lively interactions of pagans, Jews, and Christians, tracing the conversions of Christianity from an energetic form of Jewish messianism to an arm of the late Roman state. I love early Christian history. It's fascinating stuff. There's always more to learn. And also, if you are interested in a shorter read, this is on the order of 200 pages. So, last but not least, coming out on Tuesday, tomorrow, November 12th, our last book, by a name you will certainly be familiar with if you love Soviet history. She has written many, many books on the subject. That is Sheila Fitzpatrick. And this is her newest book, as far as I know. This is, Lost Souls. I got distracted. Lost Souls, Soviet Displaced Persons, and the Birth of the Cold War. So, when World War II ended, about 1 million people with whom the Soviet Union claimed as its citizens were outside the borders of the USSR, mostly in the western occupied zones of Austria and Germany. These displaced persons, or DPs, Russians, pre-war Soviet citizens, and people from West Ukraine and the Baltic states, forcibly incorporated into the Soviet Union in 1939, refused to repatriate to the Soviet Union despite its demands. Thus began one of the first big conflicts in the Cold War. In Lost Souls, Sheila Fitzpatrick draws on new archival research, including Soviet interviews with hundreds of DPs, to offer a vivid account of this crisis, from the competitive maneuverings of politicians and diplomats to the everyday lives of DPs. American enthusiasm and funding for funding the refugee organizations taking care of DPs quickly waned after the war. It was only after DPs were redefined from victims of war and Nazism to victims of communism in 1947 that a solution was found. The United States would pay for the mass resettlement of DPs to America, Australia, and other countries outside of Europe. The Soviet Union protested this theft of its citizens, but it was a coup for the United States. The choice of DPs to live a free life in the West and the West's welcome of them became an important theme in America's Cold War propaganda battle with the Soviet Union. So Soviet Union and what happened to displaced Soviet citizens in the years after the war. Another interesting subject. Leave it to Princeton University to come out with something like this. So 5 books from Princeton. Keep your eyes peeled. They occasionally have sales, discounts, quite steep ones actually. There may be another one in the spring sometime, I don't know. But 5 things to look out for in the upcoming weeks and months. Let me know if anything interests you, and I will see you soon. I promise I have some more reviews and other books to show you, stuff from a library book sale, all of these books too. There's another pile right behind it. Just a lot of stuff. But I'll see you soon. Bye.